Okay, so I'm Dave Pearce, and hopefully you can see behind me picture of me fishing with my son Alexander as we take a sustainably caught carway from the tide just down from the winery. The Trailblazer bit came from an excellent seminar put on by the Ministry of the Environment last Friday at which I spoke. More accurately, I'm called a chief winemaker rather than the Trailblazer though, I have to say. The thrust of my presentation is to do with the VCM, the voluntary carbon market, what it is, why we need it, and why it's absolutely bizarre that 3 days ago I was involved in discussions as to whether we needed it at all. First, though, a background and a little bit of a short story about the company, and lastly, why I've put in the need for a fair fight. 3 or so years ago, we embarked on a project to focus on our various sustainability initiatives. The scope naturally involved looking at our business and its operations and a whole lot of other stuff. We then took it out further, including distribution to the ultimate end user, which was a young lady taking a bottle of wine off the supermarket shelf in Sainsbury's. We also looked at our customer perception issues like carbon labelling, stakeholder concerns from Sainsbury's, food miles, carbon life cycle analysis coming as a response to food miles. And this is a slide I showed at that very conference we're talking about. If we don't think that food miles matter, then I tell you what, you're wrong, because if you go any further from that supermarket shelf, you're coming back. And lest we forget, here you can see some examples of how we sell ourselves worldwide, and we've just heard a bit about that. Pure, clean, clear, green, healthy, etc., etc., etc. We all have a common interest in giving these words a little bit more integrity. And then finally, the realization that global warming is a pretty big issue, and maybe we should have a little think about that. And with this in mind, we worked on designing our economic sustainability model. I should glance at that once in a while, shouldn't I? The individual programs manage our environmental impacts. They cover issues specific to our location and industry through to the more global issues. The economic sustainability model allows a consumer to make a value judgment and support a company doing what we, and hopefully they, believe are the right things. If it works, we get to do it again, and everybody benefits. In other words, a virtuous cycle. It works if we actually get to that customer, and if that customer is a willing buyer. But I digress. We'll come back to that concept in a moment. The big driver for our model is carbon zero. Although, as you saw, it's only one of several programs. We achieved this in September 2006. It seems like a long time ago now. We became the world's first carbon neutral winery. Landcare Research came up with a program funded by the New Zealand government, developed the program with 3 fundamental components, the well-known measure, manage and mitigate. Tonight we're talking about the VCM, and so I'm most interested in the mitigate. Those emissions which remain after managing down are, of course, mitigated. In our case, we actually sponsor the farming of native forest in the Marlborough Sounds. That's about 600 hectares being farmed. Because we buy carbon credits from them, we're involved in the VCM. More importantly, we could not be carbon zero if we weren't buying credits from them, and therefore, if there were no VCM, there would be no carbon zero. So what happened? This is sustainability for you. It's a sustainably fed cow and sustainably grown sheep, I believe. We just invested a great deal of money in getting this far. Well, we had about 2 months of very nervous behaviour at the winery, and then Al Gore came out with an inconvenient truth. And Nicola Stern followed that up with the Stern Report, and it was all pretty good. Gatekeepers in the UK started to pay attention, and as Gordon says in the ad, you probably can't see it, wines you can swear by. And there were many more examples of this for us, and we gained significant growth in that market. The BBC commissioned a documentary on New Zealand for the World Environmental Day here, and it showed us for about 3 minutes each program. That screened 6 times during the week, and we were seen by 200 discrete viewers. So how's it feel? Well, we'll come back to that too. The VCM. What does it actually mean? Well, I really gave this some thought, and I realised I needed to break it down and start with the simplest answers. And I started with carbon. Carbon, it's often been said now, is money, basically. We live in a carbon economy. I think we have to take it as given. So there you go. The next easiest was voluntary, and since carbon is money, I looked for voluntary taxation, since that's what mitigation really amounts to. This was one of the first images Google threw up at me. I don't know who it is, but I think I got the message, and if I wasn't quite sure about that message, I got it about 3 or 4 shots later when this one came along. So voluntary wasn't looking too good. However, I already knew that market wasn't a hell of a good option for me either. So market, let's start with the easy ones. The world of commercial activity where goods and services are bought and sold. Fair enough. Then go a little bit further. Be in the market for, be on the market, etc., etc. Slightly more complex definitions based on the needs of the two parties. And we'll return to the top one in a minute. And then the economic definition, I'm not going to read it out from Wikipedia, looks further at the economic and political climate, laws, morals, constraints, imperatives that markets operate in. And I think we all understand the term free market may mean many things, but it's unlikely to mean what it says. Okay, and while we're on markets, just a quick look. These are the markets that mean most to us relative to size. It's a very interesting shot. If you can pick all the countries, you're doing all right. And the more surprising, given that the UK map that we saw earlier, is that even in the UK, and this came out last year, there aren't actually that many people who care all that much. So how's my economic sustainability model going? Well, oh, she looks all right, doesn't she? My green consumer in Sainsbury's is certainly still a very attractive position, and but is she in the market for my wine? Is she the willing purchaser that I've mentioned who wants to make a difference? And does she have lots of friends, and are they everywhere, especially here? Because if I'm going to export, I need to have a good domestic market. And if they're not, we don't have a market. No market, no mitigation, no mitigation, no VCM. And that's been a very slow way of getting to Aristotle because my time's running out. And he said that, which is basically that the common good isn't going to be done by individuals. It's going to have to be done by somebody else. That which is the greatest common number, and that which is the greatest common number is usually managed by the government. And one way or another, cajole, threaten, reward, incentivize, educate, punish, support, we all know them, we have to give the VCM the opportunity of that fair fight, domestically and internationally, by nurturing those markets and creating awareness and demand. And I'm not going to go into that because I haven't got time and I don't know everything anyway. But I would point out that it needs doing for all our sakes because we're an exporting country. It needs doing because we're all New Zealanders, or most of us are, and I think we probably all care. It needs doing because actually at the end of the day, it's not about sales and marketing, it's about the world. And going back to the green room, I still haven't decided. Thank you.